I've got quite a few of these Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes that I've collected over the years, so I'm super intrigued by the brand new Anastasia Beverly Hills palette that's coming out in this same format. And if you are too, hi, good looking, welcome back to the channel, and thanks so much for joining me. I am going to be duping the vibes of the brand new Anastasia Nouveau palette, I think is what it's called. And I'm going to be showing you guys how I picked a couple of these shadows out of my collection and where I got them from, where I sourced them from my single eyeshadow collection. Then I also want to give you guys some nice, beautiful, juicy swatches of the actual shadows, just kind of spend some time with you guys showing you off those beautiful swatches. So if you like that kind of content, also liking sunscreens and makeup brushes, make sure you subscribe to my channel and let's get started. Saw this launching, Anastasia's back at it, and I thought I would put together my own rendition. Use some eyeshadows from my collection because this is a palette that is extremely appealing to me. It's got the grungy greens, it's got the neutral tones, but they are muted. There's color in it, however, it is muted. So definitely appealing to somebody who likes muted neutrals, such as myself. And yeah, so without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Let's jump into some swatches. Oh, wait. Before that, I'm gonna show you guys how I picked out some of these shadows. So take a look. I'm thinking that wings could be something like this, or even something a little bit more golden. And I think for that shade, I'm gonna choose Recruit. And that is Apricot. Yeah, I definitely feel like that's an apricot. This has almost got like a duochrome shiftiness to it. The one I'm particularly interested in is Makeup Geek's Insomnia, and some of you OG fans might have this in a loose pigment, but I do know for the Manny MUA palette, she pressed the pigment and it's that lower left hand corner. Some palettes have Insomnia and some of them don't have the duochrome Insomnia, and it was replaced with something else, so little known fact. And that is what it looks like, and to me that looks just like the ABH formulation, and it really looks very similar, though it's a little bit more blue. But you know, I think I might want that as my formula. If not, Sydney Grace's Chameleon would be the next one that I would do, and it's just that MAC blue brown shade. I don't know if it's in here or not. It doesn't look like it's in here. It looks like it might be in the colors, but for sure Sydney Grace Chameleon. If you have that, that doubles as, what is the shade? Peacock. And then Fleur, it looks to be just kind of like a nice muted peachy pink. So maybe not this. Ooh, this one. I bet this is Honesty. Yeah, I would go with Honesty for that. It's kind of a nude peachy pink. This one's going to be a little bit deeper. I thought I'd go ahead and bust open my, you know what, Wisteria I thought was in the Norvina palette. It's actually the shade Soul. So if you have Norvina's, like the Norvina in the velour, that would be a pretty one. I feel it's a little bit more grungy in comparison to Regal. This one's a little softer, a little bit more like periwinkle. I think I'll go with Regal. But if you had Norvina's palette, because you were kind of a collector at one time, then that might be suitable. All right, now you guys got to see how I picked out some of these shadows for my palette and how well they work together, and kind of saw that this time around, I'm really just using what I've got, because there are so many shades that you could use in place of, you know, shadows that are featured in the Anastasia Beverly Hills palette, but you don't have to be so exact. That's what I love about neutrals and the muted colored neutrals, because you can really fudge a lot and get away with a lot. And then I did spend some time finding that perfect Wisteria purple shade in the collection. I got a couple different swatches and I found what was best for this palette. I feel like it anyways. So let's go ahead and jump into some of those juicy swatches. Okay, here is the palette in all its glory, and you can see it's a nice muted soft shade. We're starting out with Recruit, which actually has a bit of a duochrome vibe to it, and it is a muted golden green shade. I think it's really, really close to Hot Stuff, except Hot Stuff leans more golden, however. Then I'm using the shade Apricot in place of, don't even know what that shade is. I actually have the picture still saved to my phone, so you'll have to excuse me, but I don't have it. And this also gives duochrome vibes, but it is a soft peach shade. Next up, Amber. This went a little bit darker than probably the Anastasia palette, but I do feel like I like that depth and dimension that this shadow brings. It's a golden brown. I think it fits really well. Sydney Grace does some awesome shimmers in her palette, so this doesn't disappoint at all. Regal is what I found to be in place of that Wisteria shade, which is that pop of purple. I feel like that's kind of the sales marketing. That's like the money shot for this palette. I chose Regal. It's a little darker. It's a little darker. It's not quite as periwinkle purple, and I think it fits more of that grungy vibe that I'm truly into. So if you are truly into it as well, Regal might be your shade. Then I chose Paris, which actually I was told I don't think is available on Sydney Grace's website anymore. But nonetheless, if you already have this shadow, it is a beautiful champagne rose gold shadow that fits in this palette very well. Commission is that golden green that I chose. I wasn't very good at choosing shadows that didn't look very similar. However, I think the palette has some shades that are very similar. So you can see that very first shade compared to Commission. So Recruit compared to Commission, very, very similar. So just to let you guys know and be forewarned that they are very similar. I chose the creamy shadow Beaches from Sydney Grace's collection. And I think that I wanted to go a little bit warmer, peachier, and yellow instead of the straight peach. I also used the shadow Honesty, which in my camera looks a little bit more warmer than it actually is. I would say it's probably mostly neutral, but it is a nice neutral, muted, pale pink shadow, and I thought that looks really nice, and that's what I chose for it. I used General as the Army Olive Drab Green for my palette. I love this shadow in a lot of my dupe palettes, and in a lot of the BYOPs, I generally use this shadow. I'm going to build up that swatch for you guys so you guys can get the full pigmentation and the full vibe of it, but it is an olive drab green, but it does kind of have that like brown in it as well. Ooh, the duochrome. Max Blue Brown kind of gives this vibe off, and that's what Marlene Estelle mimicked her Insomnia shadow after. It is the blue-brown vibe, but this actually leans a little bit more teal. In Anastasia's palette, it also looks kind of a teal purple, but it is supposed to actually mimic Max Blue Brown, and its formula is so creamy and buttery, and I didn't have to spend very much time building up that swatch. In fact, I don't at all. And then Mandraine is the pop of peachy coral that I use in place of, I don't remember what the shade was, but it was gorgeous. And then it doesn't really swatch very well. However, I have used it in action. It performs beautifully. Doesn't swatch very good, performs wonderfully. It actually shows up mostly orange in this, but it is kind of a peachy coral orange, and it's very beautiful. Very beautiful in the eyes. Chocolate Bar is the last shadow that's going to dupe my Anastasia Beverly Hills Nouveau palette. And it's just a really, really dark chocolatey. It does have some shimmer in it. Reminds me of the Desert Lights. If you have the Flower Beauty Desert Lights palette, it reminds me of that brown. So those are the shades that I chose to use instead of going out and running out and purchasing the Anastasia Beverly Hills latest and greatest palette. All right, what did you guys think of my selection of eyeshadows that I used instead of picking up the Anastasia Beverly Hills? Again, I am on a no buy, so I am really intrigued to see some of the looks that I can come up with using this palette right here. I can foresee, however, picking out another shade for this, just because even on camera it does look a bit muted, but in person, I can assure you it is very vibrant and it is very rich. Much like I can anticipate the Anastasia Beverly Hills palette to be, it probably has this shade very, very spicy looking, but in practicality, I don't know that I would use something like that. I would probably put a satin in its place and maybe make it a little bit more muted. But nonetheless, there you go. Those are some of the selections that I have for my Anastasia Beverly Hills Nouveau. Is it Nouveau? Is it Nouveau? I don't know. I should have probably looked that up. I do apologize. But anyways, I don't reach for these palettes. To be 100% honest with you, I don't reach for these palettes a whole lot. I don't think I'm the only one in the beauty community that doesn't really reach for these palettes a whole lot. The shadows, the consistencies, the formulas, they're a little bit, I don't want to say dated because that sounds like a fast fashion word, but for the term that really comes to mind, is kind of a bit dated. A lot of times you can use some of the shimmers in place of a matte just because there's a little bit of luster that's lacking in it. The one that comes to mind is the shade Sultry. I bet you anything I could use this shadow right here in place of a matte, and there's already several mattes in the palette. So this palette that's coming out and launching for Anastasia is half and half, half shimmer, half mattes, which I think is very smart from a company standpoint of view, because I do see the pendulum swinging the other way. We're kind of getting into those beautiful mattes again, which of course that always excites me, but I'm still front and center for those beautiful shimmers, and I would have liked to have seen a topper shadow in the palette featured. I think that would have been nice and innovative for the brand, but nonetheless we didn't get anything, or at least I can't tell on the swatches from Anastasia's page that they are anything other than their usual just tried and true good formulation. I mean, I think when we stopped with like what was it, that the Alyssa Edwards, then I think it was the Jackie Aina, and Jackie Aina was already kind of trending towards that innovative, giving the different textures and the different formulations for shimmers. But I don't necessarily see that in this palette that's coming out. So let me know if you're planning to pick up that palette because you too are attracted to the shades and the color story. And if you're not, what are you using instead? I can't wait to see you guys in my next video.